In today's show, we're talking about free agency, day 2 in the NBA, and of course, Damian Lillard officially requesting a trade. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com and the promo code is Locked On. Did I say thank you for making this your first listen every day? Well, if I haven't, thank you for making this your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. So we're here to talk about NBA Free Agency Day 2. It is currently 9 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night. So if any deals happen, any trades go down, I'll cover it on tomorrow's show. What we did get was our second trade request of the period. The first one was Jim Harden, who opted into his contract, and it looks like he's going to end up with the Clippers. And the next one is Damian Lillard, finally. And I don't know how to feel about it. He's saying that he only wants to go to the Heat. Cool. I would send him anywhere else but the Heat. And that's because I'm just petty. I know he's been great for the franchise. I know he's been a legend. But what are the Heat bringing? Honestly, like I said this the other day when talking about Lillard in a trade, obviously the matching piece has probably got to be Tyler Hero. Why would they want Tyler Hero when they've got Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons? It makes no sense. There's no value in that. It's got to be some sort of three-way deal. If he does end up in Miami, it'd have to be. And the Heat don't have great draft picks. Again, if you're getting draft picks off this team that Dame wants to develop in Heat culture and all this bullshit, right? They think they're going to be good. So what picks do you get? You got to get something back as a good player, and Tyler Hero isn't it. Because it doesn't make sense with these other players on this team. It just doesn't work. I know that he's been loyal to this team. That's his choice. He had multiple opportunities to leave in free agency. He had multiple opportunities, or he didn't have to sign an extension that'll pay him $60 million or whatever it is when he's age 36. He didn't have to do any of that. He chose to do it. And when you talk about loyalty, that's the reward of loyalty. Is someone giving you a contract that you're not going to be worth even half of at that age, and getting the bonuses that you can get by being with that team. That's the reward, I believe anyway. And if you are going to ask for a trade and want out, all that sort of stuff, after drafting perhaps another generational type of point guard, limiting your options to one team who doesn't actually have the assets to acquire you, I'm not a fan of it. I'd love to know what Blazers fans think and how they are feeling about Lillard at the moment. I know they're still going to love him, but I don't know. This whole back and forward thing that we've dealt with, and 3 days ago we heard this leak that he's committed to building around, and they just spent $160 million in 5 years on Jeremy Grant. Is that what you do if Lillard's leaving? Did he change his mind? Did he never say that he wanted to stay? Did they sign Grant? For what purpose? The Grant deal is big and he's not that good and it's long, but I guess there's tradable value in that. But it doesn't make a huge amount of sense if you are rebuilding without Damian Lillard there. Just a very weird situation. Now, Lillard, if he does end up in Miami, we'll do more on that if he ends up somewhere else. But in terms of what happens in Portland, this does elevate Scoot's value for this season pretty clearly. But there's still a lot more that can happen there. I don't know if Simons ends up moving. Does Nurkic move and someone else comes back? I expect that Sharpe and Scoot will start immediately. And that might be Sharpe, Simons, and Scoot as the 1, 2, and 3, the old Triple S brigade. And they will all be draftable players. But there's still a lot to happen there because the trade hasn't happened. I don't know. I admit, maybe I'm not a Blazers fan. So I don't even know how a Blazers fan would feel. There's just something about it didn't really sit right with it to me. I don't actually care James Harden requesting a trade. Whatever. Like, fine. I'm sure Sixers fans will see you later. Like, I don't think they care that much about it. The Lillard one, I don't know, it just somewhat rubbed me the wrong way. There's just something about it that rubbed me the wrong way. But maybe I'm being overreactive. Maybe I'm just being too emotional on it. I don't know. And I'm not even a Blazers fan. That's why I want to hear what Blazers fans have to think about it. I guess they'll have more of a reaction when they see what actually does happen with the deal. But, yeah. Something that was interesting to see after, again, we heard that 2-3 days ago that he'd met with Cronin and they were building together. And then we see a Jeremy Grant deal that suggests the same thing. And then a day later, nah, I'm going to Miami. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. We're going to get into free agency in a second. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. It's not daily fantasy with salary caps and thousands of people in a large field tournament. It's you, one-on-one versus player projections. They put the number up and you look at it and go, more or less. That's it. You do between 2 to 6 individual player projections. You can win up to 25 times your entry fee back. It doesn't just have to be for basketball, because you can't even do it for basketball at the moment. Well, you can do it for the WNBA. You can do it for baseball, boxing, MMA, golf, NASCAR, and of course, disc golf. It's easy. You can do it in under 60 seconds. It's available in over 30 US states. It's available in the majority of Canadian territories and provinces as well. Nowhere else, but that's where it's available. And all those sports, all those options, speed, ease, use, really awesome stuff. And if you go to and download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com right now, you can sign up and play daily fantasy sports. And first-time users get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Okay, let's talk about free agency. Let's talk about players on new teams.
The world.
What's going on? Seriously, what's going on? Houston were dreadful. They were bad. They went about their rebuild in an interesting way with really the worst coach you could possibly find. Players who were selfish but with a lot of potential. And now Tillman Fertitta has gone like, we need to win. So let's throw any development from the last 2 to 3 years out the window and bring a bunch of guys in that, do they actually make them good? I don't think so. Like Fred VanVleet, sure, good player. But what was the purpose of, what's been the point of the last 3 years? I guess is what I'm trying to say. We paid Dillon Brooks, one of the most, you want to talk about guys who are selfish and are inefficient and have no idea what they're doing offensively. Well, you bring one in and you pay him $20 million to do it. So that would mean $20 million a year to do it. So Dillon Brooks is going to start for this team. So he's going to start, Fred VanVleet's going to start, Jalen Green's going to start, I'm guessing. Jabari Smith's going to start, and I have to say that Alperen Sengun's going to start because they don't have another center on this roster at this point. Although, who knows, maybe someone else comes across in another trade. So your number 4 overall pick, Amen Thompson, not going to start. Okay? Your starting point guard for the last 3 years, Kevin Porter Jr., or last 2 years, Kevin Porter Jr., he's not going to start. Your number 20 overall pick, Cam Whitmore, probably was never going to start, but he's barely going to play. The guy that allegedly, according to Rockets insiders, the internal metrics say that Tari Eason was the best rookie in the entire NBA, according to their judgment, is barely going to play. Unless they start Tari Eason and bring last year's number 3 overall pick, Jabari Smith, into a limited role off the bench. So what have you done? And what does adding Dillon Brooks and, well, actually they do have another center. Sorry, they signed Jock Landale. What does trading for Patty Mills get you? What does bringing in Jeff Green do? Yes, Jeff Green and Patty Mills, they're just bench depth veterans. And that's probably the sort of guys they should have been bringing in over the last 2 to 3 years when they had these top picks to help these players like Green and Porter to develop. But now it's time for, they rebuilt, now it's time to win. This doesn't get you to win. You know how you get to win? by having Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason hitting their ceilings. That is how you win a championship. You don't win it, no offense, Fred. You don't win it with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. That's not how you win a title. It's how you become the Washington Wizards of Texas. It's just insane. Now, there still could be more happening, so maybe I'm overreacting again. But that's all we know at the moment. Are they going to trade these guys out? What we do know is that the value of Kevin Porter Jr. is done for this season. Amen Thompson's not going to be a standard league guy. Tari Eason's probably going to struggle to do that. Sengun, he can get his value anyway, but his best value is by sort of running some offense, and he can do that with VanVleet there. But that's totally okay. He'll be okay. But Whitmore, Amen, Porter, Eason, maybe Smith, Whitmore definitely. They're all going to be really condensed down, and I don't know. I feel like there's way more stuff that is going to happen here in the future for this team. But that, for a guy that is one of the worst offensive players in the entire NBA, very good defensive player, Dillon Brooks. But is he going to pull his head in? Because you cannot be a team that wins something with him playing the way that he has. And I've said that for a long time. So yeah, if I had to give grades for a free agency signing, that's like an F-. I like Dillon Brooks, not for that length. So I don't like Dillon Brooks. What am I talking about? I respect his defensive ability, but on this team at that money for those years, woof. Ugh. I also don't really get the next couple to a degree. The big ragu, Dante DiVincenzo, 4 years, $50 million. As with a lot of these things, 4 years, $50 million for DiVincenzo, actually really good value. I think he's a strong player. That's not very expensive at all. He made good on his deal with the Warriors. He was never coming back there. That's totally understandable. But what do the Knicks need him for? So he can play alongside Brunson, Hart, Grimes, Quickly, Barrett? Something doesn't add up. Someone's not going to play. I like DiVincenzo. I like the contract. It's great value. Somebody is going to be squeezed. Is it going to be Quickly, the guy that many thought should have been Sixth Man of the Year? Is it going to be Grimes, a starter in his second season? Is Barrett out of there? And I don't particularly like Barrett as a player. But how does all this work? They got smaller by trading away Obi Toppin and bringing in Dante DiVincenzo. Not that Toppin played a huge role, but no forward still, just all guards. I need to see what's happening with these teams. That doesn't make sense. Similarly, let's do it again. The Winter Soldier, Max Strus, on a sign and trade 3-team deal, heads to Cleveland. Now, Max Strus is solid enough. He's a good shooter who didn't shoot well at all last season. He's not really a ball handler. He's 6'4". He's an okay defender. He is a solid player. Very, very solid player. I understand that. And I could be way off on this. Does he solve your issue with the three? He's not really big enough. He can't defend threes. He can't defend up at fours. Yeah, he's a great shooter in theory, but playing off of Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero last season, he didn't hit him. He didn't hit threes at all. He did the year before, but he didn't last season. Is paying him Duncan Robinson money? Not quite. Is Max Strus worth that? Does he solve their gaping hole at the three? They brought in George Niang. That's really good shooting, right? But the price of getting him in the sign and trade, like giving up Chetty Osman and giving up Lamar Stevens, who both go to San Antonio, watch that. There might be something there. Oh, no, there's not, because their rotation's foolish as well. That's nothing, giving up those players. That's fine. But to Strus at that price, do you just slot him in 20, 30-minute a night starter at small forward? What happens to LeVert? What happens to Okoro? Getting depth pieces is really good. Like, getting that extra depth is a W. Strus is an upgrade over Osman, without a shadow of a doubt. He's a better player than Isaac Okoro. But my question there is, again, it's all in a vacuum. Does he work? Does he make sense as another 6'4" shooting guard playing next to two short point guards? And Mitchell's basically a point guard. And I'm not sure that it does. I'm not sure that it works. KJ Martin traded to the Clippers. Well, he had a trade request in all of last season, and he finally gets to the Clippers. 2 second-round picks is not very much to give up. Martin started the second half of last season for the Rockets after the Rockets traded Eric Gordon to the Clippers, and then Martin started. Now he's gone to the Clippers again. Of course, KJ is not going to start on this team, most likely, although he could, because Marcus Morris is clearly washed. Covington and Batum are older. Maybe he does start. Maybe it is George, Kawhi, and KJ. Although, I think you'd be better off if players like Paul George and Kawhi realize, hey, no, we actually probably should play the 3 and the 4, not the 2 and the 3, so Norman Powell could start and Terrence Mann could start. But, you know, KJ's role post trade deadline is probably not going to be as big as it was. It's hard to see how that's going to happen. I don't see how he gets that level of playing time that he got last season. It just doesn't seem possible. All right. Let's look at some other moves. Victor Oladipo traded to the Thunder. He's dealing with that knee problem. He might not play. He might get waived. This is purely a salary dump, enabling the Heat to do moves that they did and maybe getting Damian Lillard. The Thunder get a couple of seconds, I think, for this. Not much, but they got a massive roster crunch. Someone's going to get waived. It's probably Oladipo. It's just a shame the way his career has gone. But that's what happens with injuries, unfortunately. Dennis Smith Jr. goes to the Nets. 1 year, $2.53 million. That's a loss for the Hornets. He was really good. Their backup situation now behind LaMelo Ball is Terry Rozier. It's rookie Nick Smith. If only there was a point guard available for them who could have played next to LaMelo and then handled the ball. Okay. Well, I guess we'll never know what could have happened there. But Dennis Smith goes to the Nets. Now, Dennis Smith and the Nets, what do they have? Wings. Do they have guards? Nah. They've got Spencer Dinwiddie and they've got Cam Thomas, Edmund Sumner. They don't have guards. Smith is going to play, I would guess, as a decent member of the rotation, 20 minutes a night, and will be an immediate add if someone like Dinwiddie goes down. And Dinwiddie, expiring contract too. Mentioned this already, Chetty Osman and Lamar Stevens are on the way to San Antonio. Just versatile-ish wings, forwards, power forwards, who'll play behind Sohan, play behind Keldon, play behind Vassell, play behind Wembanyama. And with losing Keita Bates-Diop, they're pretty good replacements for someone like that. Let's go to some other moves. Jackson Hayes goes to the Lakers. Really a bust of a pick at pick 8 so far. Well, clearly, they didn't even give him restricted rights. 2 years, $4.63 million with player option. They had no other center on this roster, so he will probably be the backup to Anthony Davis. He's shown flashes in very small spurts. We'll see. I don't have high hopes. 2 overseas players. Now, I have pre-recorded a show talking about Dynasty Sleeper guys, which will come out next week when I'm away. And I talked about Sasha Vezenkov in that. Well, it happened. He signed 3 years, $20 million to the Kings. He was the EuroLeague MVP. He shot very well from 3. He's like a 6'9" forward. It could be argued that sometime this season will be better than Harrison Barnes. I wouldn't be surprised. But Barnes and Murray being there means that Vezenkov will play off the bench, but he's younger than Barnes. And I think he's an interesting player to watch. And that's what I talked about at length in that show, which will come out in a week or so's time. The Thunder bring over Vasily Micic. 3 years, $23.5 million. Micic been playing very, very well in Europe. Probably should have come over 4 years ago. He was drafted in 2014. He's 30 now. But a very, very interesting defensive prospect point guard. One of the best players in Europe. But 3 years, 23 is not a huge amount of money, but they've got Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They just drafted, at pick number 10, Kaysan Wallace. So that means Wallace probably doesn't play a huge amount. Micic can be the backup behind Giddey. It means Trey Mann is double cooked. And Micic could very easily go the way of a Facu Campazzo or a Milos Teodosic, who come across a little bit too late and can't really keep up with the NBA. I worry a bit about that one. The tank, Tom Bryant. 2 years, $5.4 million to the Heat. He's now going to take the role of Omer Yurtseven, of the guy that people think should play more minutes and play next to Bam, but can't do it. Yurtseven, by the way, they just said, we don't even want your restricted rights, mate. See you later. He's gone. I don't know where he's going to end up. And Bryant's going to come over there. He's going to have a couple of games where he goes 4 of 4 from 3 and scores 12 points in 14 minutes. And why shouldn't we play Bam and Tom Bryant together? That's going to work out because Bryant's a terrible defender and he really struggles with consistency and defensive movement. And I just think it makes your team worse. Yes, they don't have a power forward at this point. Their team is very much in flux. They don't have that, and Lillard and whatever else is going to happen. But Bryant is a backup to old mate Bam, and I wouldn't think it's anything else. Some other guys changing teams. Pat Beverley, 1 year, $3.2 million. He probably plays 22, 23 a night, but we don't know because Philadelphia's still got to deal with the Harden situation. Is Zach LaVine getting traded somewhere? I've heard whispers about it. Old mate dropping dimes 20 said that Zach LaVine could be on the move. I don't know where, but is he in Philadelphia as part of a Harden deal? Beverly's not going to be a standard league player, but that does impact. Well, Shake Milton's gone, so we can take some of those minutes. Maybe it has a marginal impact on Melton. I don't know. Obi Toppin traded to the Pacers for 2 seconds. The Knicks, well, it's a couple of wasted top 10 picks. Jackson Hayes and now Obi Toppin. I think Toppin, who I didn't think was a lottery pick at the time of the draft, and I think that's true, but I thought he actually performed better than Jackson Hayes. But just never got, it's never got an opportunity. I don't know what opportunity he gets here in Indiana, given that they just drafted Jarris Walker at number 7. There's still their big acquisition last year. Jalen Smith is still there. I don't think he's going to factor into things. They play Aaron Neesmith at power forward last year. Toppin's going to play more than he did in New York, which is like 12 minutes a night. And he might actually start early on ahead of Jarris, but that would be dumb. But he might. Now, he's a pretty bad defender. He can't protect the rim. His shooting has been okay, but still, I don't think he's a great player. But if you're talking deeper leagues and dynasty formats, this is an improvement definitely for Toppin because he will play more without any doubt. The Rockets traded away Ty Washington and Usman Garuba. Of course they did. This is the interesting thing about the Rockets is it's like there's a new GM there, but there's not. It's the same bloke who got all these players and just dumped them. They traded them to the Hawks for the rights for Alpha Kaba, French legend. Now Garuba, I think is a pretty good backup center. It doesn't really make sense in Atlanta unless old mate Clint Capella's on the way out. Where's my sound for him?
Dental plan.
Lisa needs braces.
Because he's a third stringer now behind bloody just blanked Capella and Okongwu. And Ty moves in behind Trey and DeJounte and Bufkin. I think that Ty has some upside to be a solid backup point guard, maybe more. I don't know. But it's for the cost of nothing. Might as well do it. I think a lot of the moves that have been happening here with the Hawks may indicate that they are secretly, maybe not so secretly, looking at deals for one of their existing point guards. I would say it's probably DeJounte Murray. But maybe it's Trae Young if your conspiracy mind wants to go that way. I don't think so. But I don't know. There's some other moves that have happened. Damian Jones was traded to the Cavs to be a third-string center. They've tried like Ed Davis, Robin Lopez in that role. Jones developing a three-point shot, not a bad player. Fine. For the cost of nothing as well. He moves on from the Jazz. They didn't pay anything for this deal. Ty Jerome goes to the Cavs, 2 years, $5 million. I thought he was on a two-way last year. I thought he was pretty poor, actually, for Golden State. He played a lot, but he also moves into a rotation that is Garland, Rubio, Mitchell. They just acquired Max Strus as a guard that Ty's more of a point guard. He's not really going to play there. It's just emergency stuff. Patty Mills traded to the Rockets. He, unfortunately, loved Patty Mills. I think he's washed at an NBA level. He's not going to really play too much unless, imagine they play Fred VanVleet, the backup Patty Mills, and Porter and Amen rack up DMPs. I'll fly over there myself. And then Jock Landale. 4 years, $32 million. Great reporting from the agent because only 1 year of that is guaranteed. And then there's 2 non-guarantees and then there's a team option. Jock Landale replaces Usman Garuba in the rotation to be the backup center behind Alperen Şengün, I guess. But I've heard talk. Are they going to reunite with Clint Capella? I've heard talk of it. So I don't know. So everything still remains in flux. Landale, if Şengün misses time, Landale showed that he can be a useful starting center. Thought he played well in Phoenix. They got Drew Eubanks, who's maybe a little bit better. But it's an interesting player. I did not expect that I'd be talking about Jack White. two-way guy for the Nuggets last season, and the Thunder said, all right, here's 2 years. I'm guessing it's minimum with guarantees. He didn't really play for Denver. Had a terrible Achilles injury, I think playing, I don't know if it was here or was it, in Australia or if it was at Duke. But anyway, he gets himself a ring and he goes to the Thunder. Not an impact player here, really. I spent a lot of time shitting on the Raptors yesterday, but getting Jalen McDaniels 2 years, $9 million is a pretty good piece of business. However, what do they need another 6'9" forward for? Again, the value of Jalen McDaniels at $4.5 million is really strong. He hasn't yet developed a consistent shot. Man, have you heard that story before with the Raptors? He's a pretty good defender. He's long. He's a forward. That's great. Did they have any of those sort of players anywhere on this team? I'm not really sure. So, after they guaranteed Thad Young's contract as well, we're just leaning more back into the, hey, let's get players who can't shoot or struggle to shoot or shooting's not their strength outside of Grady Dick, who they brought in. And I still don't know what they're doing. So while this is almost a backhanded compliment, I love the value in Jalen McDaniels. Is it really what you needed, though? Did you actually, unless there's other moves coming. Siakam traded, OG traded, you're cutting Thad Young, you're moving on from Boucher, I don't know. But another 6'9"-ish, 6'8". Maybe someone's going to correct me that he's only 6'8" or 6'7". Maybe that's right. I think he's 6'9", but whatever. He might be 6'7". Another forward who has waxing and waning shooting numbers. And I like Jalen McDaniels. The path to the clear minutes here in Toronto, not really there. Jeff Green.
My name is Jeff.
Congrats to Jeff Green. Going to play for every team in the NBA by the end of his career. 1 year, $6 million. Great little bonus payment to the Rockets. Leaves Denver. What I think this does, hey, and I referenced that show I'm going to do about Dynasty Sleepers. I talked about Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson is a rotation player now for Denver, I'm guessing. Peyton Watson is about to blow up in a way. If you're in a Dynasty League, here's advance warning, get him. I talk about it in that show that comes out at some point next week. Yeah. But yeah, this is it for Peyton. As for Jeff, this is the guy that should have been on this team 2 years ago. Teaching Jabari Smith, teaching Jalen Green. I worry with what the Rockets are doing that they're going to be like, all right, Jeff, you need to play 24 a night for us because we need to win. And Jeff Green's like 38, I think. 37. Solid player. But does this take more minutes away from Tari Eason? More minutes from Jabari Smith? I don't know. Again, I still remain confused about what the Rockets actually hope to achieve this season. Let's talk about players re-signing. Tyrese Halliburton. Sorry, his correct term, the $1 million man, Tyrese Halliburton. Now, I've listed Tyrese Halliburton, Desmond Bane, and LaMelo Ball with the same contract, because it is. 5 years, $207 million rookie max. Now, the way that Woj originally tweeted the Halliburton deal is up to $260 million, and people got pretty fired up about that. But it's basically, that's the Rose rule. If you win MVP or All-NBA first team, I think it is, during that rookie contract, that it bumps up to that number, which is pretty unlikely, but that's what could happen, right? So Halliburton, Bane, and Ball all with that same deal. Rookie max contract. People get upset a lot about seeing contracts, and we'll talk about all these guys in a vacuum. Does it make sense that Tyrese Halliburton could be making more than Steph Curry? No. But that's also not how any of this works. Because it's all to do with when you sign a contract, the max contract is a percentage of that, 30, 35%, whatever you're at in your career, of the current salary cap. But it doesn't go up each year. It's not like you get 35% of the cap every year, no matter what the cap does. You get your 8% raises or 5% raises, and the cap goes up 10, and then in year 3, it's gone up 10 each year, and you've only gone up 8 each year. Well, you're way behind what the max actually is. So every time a new player signs a deal, like Halliburton on their 30% or whatever their rookie max is, it looks way bigger. And part of the problem, and I don't really like the max contract situation because it means that we get, especially in terms of media discourse around it, is that you get people, man, there's no way Desmond Bane is worth this much money. Well, he probably is. He's a really good player to begin with. He averaged like 21 points a game. He's highly efficient. I think he's going to make an all-star game in the next couple of years. I think he's a really good player. But it's not that he's making this money, because that's the most he can make. It's that maybe LaMelo Ball or Tyrese Halliburton or Anthony Edwards or Steph Curry, Paul George, whoever the player is, they should be making more. But they can't, based on the way the rules are written. They can't make any more money. If they were to sign, if they were a free agent right now, Steph, Kawhi, Paul George, whoever, if they were a free agent right now, they would sign a contract that is worth more than that. To a small amount. But they're also, Steph Curry at age 27 was worth $70 million a year probably. But the game limits it. A max contract doesn't mean you are a top 10 player in the NBA. Because just by the artificial limiting nature of the max contract, it doesn't work that way. And you don't really have any choice. Like drafting Bane, huge hit at pick 30. He's still on a super cheap contract this year. He's hyper valuable. The salary cap's going to rise. Like, you do it. He's worth this contract, I believe. But it's more the fact that better players get undervalued through no fault of Baines or the Grizzlies or that player, but through the rules. So I actually don't have any problem with these deals. Edwards is going to get this max as well. Like if it comes out and Devin Vassell or Onyeka Okongwu get a deal like this, and I'll go, okay, that's probably too much. But I'm also, as a general rule, more likely to want to bet on a player being better versus having to pay, sorry, Dame, I'm going to use you again, a player at age 36, $64 million. Damian Lillard at age 28, 29, 30, 31 was worth that contract. Damian Lillard at age 36 will not be. Jimmy Butler at age 35 will not be worth $56 million. Chris Paul was not worth his contract at his age. That's what happens. And the way the NBA salary structure works, it means that you get paid for what you did 8 years ago. And then it makes you into a bad contract by the time you get to the time when you can actually be paid. Whereas, theoretically, like when you're age 34, 35, you should be, all right, I've made my $70 million a year through my 26 to 31 age period. I can take my pay cut now and let the other players sort of step up and I'll be more of a veteran sort of presence. And that's where I think it's really wrong. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's my opinion. Did you want to hear it? Probably not. But we're here. Brook Lopez, 2 years, $48 million, goes back to the Milwaukee Bucks. Outside of losing Javon Carter, they're basically running it back. So I guess if you're, the fear was going to Houston and taking the role from Alperen Sengun, I would expect that Lopez declines from what he did last season. Almost no way he doesn't, really. And be really cautious about where you draft him. Austin Reeves is back in LA, as is D'Angelo Russell. 4 years, 56 for Austin Reeves. Unbelievably cheap. Unbelievably cheap. He is quite a good player. He is their third best player. He can run pick and roll. I don't know. They won't run him as a starting point guard because they've just brought D'Angelo Russell back 2 years, $37 million, and they brought in Gabe Vincent. But Russell, Reeves, Vincent all there means that Vincent's not a 12-team league player, very clearly. Russell is borderline, I would say. He might be 12. He's very borderline. That is, I know there were limitations on what Reeves could get in terms of contracts, but another team could have offered way more than that and forced the Lakers to match. Pretty frustrating that it didn't happen, honestly. That is, and the Lakers have done remarkably well through most of their moves in free agency. I didn't love the Cam Reddish one, but it's low price. Thought Rui was overpriced a little bit. But even D'Angelo Russell at this price is totally okay. It's fine. I think they've done really well. Trevor Hudgens is back on a two-way with the Rockets. Cool. They also brought back Darius Days. That was yesterday, but I forgot to report that. Flaming Mo Wagner is back. Mo Wagner is back with the Magic, 2 years, $16 million. I would assume that he is back as their backup center. Bol is not. Well, he's not their backup center, but he's not gone. He's still there. Mo was useful. And when Wendell Carter was out last season, Mo was a useful fantasy player. Back on the team, Reasonable contract for a backup center, and he's turned himself into a solid backup center, much like a Drew Eubanks or a Jock Landale, who we saw signed yesterday. Well, Eubanks is actually a little bit cheaper, but that's the sort of level of player they are. Jay Crowder. Should we give him one last one of these before PJ Washington takes it for himself?
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
I think it's a minimum contract for Crowder. He's back with the Milwaukee Bucks. Mavericks lifer. The Mavericks, Nick Collison, Dwight Powell is back. 3 years, $12 million. So they now have Rashawn Holmes, Maxi Kleber, Dwight Powell, Derek Lively the second. Lively's not going to play, folks. Well, let's rephrase that. If you're hoping for Lively, who I think is a very good dynasty asset, if you are thinking that Derek Lively is going to be a standard league fantasy option this season, I think you're wrong. Jason Kidd will rely upon Powell to play his 20 minutes and Kleber to play his 24 minutes, and even like Holmes probably gets hurt a little bit here as well. I thought there was an opportunity for him to step up somewhat, and maybe he doesn't. But Lively is not going to play much at all, especially early on. Russell Westbrook is back with the Clippers.
Price of the brick going up.
There were rumors that Westbrook would get $15 million a year, and sure, lol, that clearly didn't happen. 2 years, $8 million. It might be a little bit underpriced, honestly, but he wanted to stay in LA. They brought him back. As for what his role is, I don't know, because this team is still very much the favorite to acquire James Harden. I would hope that they do not go into the season thinking that Westbrook is their starter. It should be Terrence Mann, but I don't know what they're going to do. Regardless, with hopefully a healthier team, with the addition of KJ Martin into the rotation, with Norman Powell, with Terrence Mann, that Westbrook, even if he does start, doesn't play 30 minutes a night, and he's probably, maybe for point leagues, but probably for category leagues, not a draftable player. But there's still a lot to happen there with the Clippers. Sandro Mamukelashvili, 1 year, $2 million back with the Spurs. He was solid towards the end of last season. They haven't brought back Don Barlow. I think they might still, but yeah, Mamu moves in as probably third string, maybe back up behind Zach Collins and Wemby, depending on how they want to characterize those guys. And then a bunch of Heat transactions. They signed 3 two-ways. Jamari Boyea, Jamal Cain, who is someone to watch, and Drew Smith, who was with the Heat, went to the Nets, back with the Heat. An interesting guard player, but yeah, it looks like Lillard and Lowry could be the point guards on that team. And these guys aren't going to do much, but they converted their two-way guy, Orlando Robinson, who showed a few little flashes as a center last season, onto a 1 year deal. I'm going to assume it was a minimum contract. He's just been converted straight across from his two-way and onto a standard contract to be the third string center, I guess, with no word yet on Cody Zeller. But with Tom Bryant there as the backup center, Orlando Robinson is probably the third string guy. Now that brings us to the end of this show, and I'm going to do my requisite check-in. Did anything happen? No, we got out clear. So follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.